In this video, I'm going to look at a couple different examples of solving quadratics using the factoring method. Okay, remember factoring involves changing this from a sum of terms into a product of two terms. And to do that, the first thing I need to do is set this equation equal to 0, meaning I need to collect all of the terms together on the same side of the equation. To do that, I'm going to subtract 4x to both sides, and I'm also going to subtract 5 because I need to cancel those terms on the right side and move them all to join the x squared term on the left. When I cancel both of those things there, I'm left with nothing on that side of the equation. So we get x squared minus 4x minus 5 is equal to 0. That sets me up in a position to start to factor my equation. The second step is to look for a greatest common factor. Notice here my a is 1. A is 1 here. I have -4 for b, and I have -5 for c. Between those three numbers, my greatest common factor is just a 1. And I don't have a common variable in common with all three terms. So I'm not able to factor out a GCF to change the problem at all. So I'm going to move to step 3, which is to use the X method. So as we said when we were looking for GCF, A in this problem is equal to 1, B is equal to -4, and C is equal to -5. When I factor this problem, X is the spot where my house lives. The top of my house has a ceiling, and there's a basement at the bottom. A times C is going to be -5, and B is going to be -4. So I'm asking myself, what multiplies to -5 but adds to -4? I know that I'm going to need a negative and a positive, and I think if I do -5 and +1, those add to -4. So to rewrite my problem, I'm going to use those two numbers. Because a is 1, I don't have to worry about dividing these two numbers by a. I'm going to get x minus 5 in parentheses, and then x plus 1 in parentheses. And that's equal to 0. Step 4 involves applying the zero product property. And because we have one set of parentheses that represents a single number being multiplied to another set of parentheses which represents a single number, and the product of those two items is equal to 0, then I know the only way for that to be true is for x values that make one of these parentheses 0. So the zero product property allows me to say x can be equal to whatever makes x minus 5 equal to 0, or whatever makes x plus 1 equal to 0. And then from there, we want to solve for x. So on the left equation, x minus 5, I'm going to add 5 to both sides. And I get x equals 5 as a solution. And then on the right equation, we're going to subtract 1 from both sides. And we're going to get x is equal to -1. Okay? All right. Our second example, same process. We're going to start with setting our equation equal to 0. We have 4x squared plus 32 is equal to 36. The only thing I need to worry about is this 36x, so I'm going to subtract it from both sides of my equation. That allows me to set the right side equal to 0. I get 4x squared minus 36x plus 32 is equal to 0. Now looking at this equation, I want to move to step 2 and look for that greatest common factor. Looking at these numbers, I have 4, -36, and +32. I can tell right now that the greatest common factor between all three of those numbers is 4. Now, if we were just simply factoring, we would factor that number out. But because we're solving, we can actually divide everything by that greatest common factor. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to divide everything by 4 because everything divides by 4. Okay, 4 divided by 4 is equal to 1, so I get 1x squared, or just x squared. Negative 36 divided by 4 is going to be negative 9x, and 32 divided by 4 is going to be a positive 8. 0 divided by 4 will stay as a 0, and now I'm in a position where I don't have any more greatest common factor, and I can move to step 3. For step 3, if we factor using the x method, we need to know that a is 1 here, b is negative 9, and c is 8. Set up our x method. X is the spot where my house lives. I have a ceiling at the top of my house, a basement at the bottom. A times c is going to be 8, and b is going to be negative 9. So we're asking ourselves what multiplies to 8 and adds to negative 9. Well, I know 8 times 1 is 8. 8 plus 1 is 9, but I need negatives. If I multiply two negatives, I stay positive, so I could do negative 8 and negative 1. And I think that works for my riddle. So factoring my problem, I'm going to get x minus 8, x minus 1 is equal to 0. Now step 4 is to apply the zero product property, which allows me to rewrite this as x minus 8 equals 0 and x minus 1 equals 0. Solving the left side, I'm going to add 8 to both sides. Get x equals 8. And add 1 to both sides on the other equation. I get x equals 1. And there you have the two solutions for this example. One more problem for you, slightly more difficult. All right, we got 12x squared is equal to 6x plus 36. Step 1 is to set this equal to 0, so I'm going to go ahead and do that and move everything on the right side to the left. All right, so on the right side, I get 12x squared minus 6x minus 36. I'm sorry, I think I said right, I meant the left. And then on the right side, everything cancels out and we're set equal to 0. Now we want to look for our greatest common factor between 12, 6, and 36. I believe that's going to be 6. So I'm going to try to divide everybody by 6. All right, 12 divided by 6 is going to be 2x squared. Negative 6 divided by 6 is going to be negative 1x. And negative 36 divided by 6 is going to be negative 6 equals to 0. 0 divided by 6 is 0. Okay, now we can use the x method. A is equal to 2, b is equal to negative 1, and c is equal to negative 6. Set up our house. X is the spot where my house lives. The top of my house, I have a ceiling. Bottom of my house has a basement. Basement is going to be negative 1. A times c is going to be 2 times negative 6, which would be negative 12. And now I'm thinking of numbers that multiply to negative 12 and add to negative 1. And I think we get negative 4 and 3. Negative 4 and 3. But a is not 1 here. A is 2. So now we have to try to divide both these numbers by 2 to see if anything simplifies. 3 divided by 2 doesn't simplify. So when I write this binomial, remember the denominator becomes the new coefficient on x, and the numerator becomes the constant. This is positive, so I'm going to put positive 2x plus 3. On the left side of this house, I get negative 4 divided by 2. That simplifies to negative 2 over 1. So the binomial on this side is going to be 1x minus 2, because I have a negative. So I can factor this problem as 1x minus 2, or just x minus 2, and 2x plus 3. Applying the zero product property in step 4, I'm going to split these into 2 separate equations. One is x minus 2 is equal to 0, and one where 2x plus 3 is equal to 0. Solving the left equation, we get x minus 2, I'm going to add 2. My answer will be x equals 2 on that side. For this one, I have a 2-step equation, so that's going to take me 2 steps to get to my solution. I'm going to start with subtracting 3 from both sides, and then I get 2x is equal to negative 3, and then I want to try to divide by 2, and I get x is equal to negative 3 halves. You can leave your answer as a fraction, just make sure that it's simplified entirely. And it should be, because the binomial doesn't have anything in any GCFs other than 1. And there you have it. There's 3 examples of solving by factoring. The key thing to remember is that when you set up your x, if a is anything other than 1, make sure you try to divide it so you can set up your binomials correctly. All right, good luck.